They say an investment in knowledge pays the best interest. Hi, and welcome back to They Say It Takes a Village. On today's episode, I'm joined with financial mentor and creator of Dirhams and Junes, Beth Clay. And we're here to talk about money, how to invest it, save it, and comfortably speak it. So without further ado, Beth.
Oh, thank you so much, Ray. It's lovely to be on the show today.
Thank you for coming. I mean, I feel like this was something that I had in the back of my mind to do, not for anything, but honestly, it was just general. I need coaching, financial coaching. And I find it's so important. And I feel like specifically we're going to be talking about women being financially literate, and being comfortable to talk about money openly. So I really appreciate you being here.
No, not at all. I mean, that's one of the reasons I really want to be on the show, really, and particularly talking to kind of women and parents as well about how to manage finances, because it is so important. And hence why I've kind of developed the blog, and obviously now the Instagram Mums That Invest, which is very much about
I love the title,
addressing everything finance related.
Yeah. Do you want to tell a little bit about yourself, just your background, and how long have you been actually living here in the UAE?
Yeah, so I've been in the UAE probably just over a year now. I'm originally from the UK. So I lived there most of my life. Did a brief stint over in China, but yeah, I'm a mum of two children, a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old.
Oh, we've got very similar ages.
Yes. Yeah. A handful, I would say.
Absolutely. It took me about 2 hours to get out of the house today to make it here.
No, I get it every single day. But yeah, and my journey in kind of finance really, came from, and the real reason for kind of starting the blog and the Instagram is very much kind of my experience at a young age, really. So my father was a financial director of several different firms and brilliant with finances. And I just really was empowered by watching him. But sadly, he passed away at the age of when I was about 17, leaving my mum and the three of us. So my sister was 15, and then my little brother, who's got severe learning disabilities, who was about 9. And whilst my dad was incredible, he set us up for life, like my mum with her sort of the life insurance, and obviously for us to go to university as well. Ultimately my mum was there, the age of about 50, I think she was, but having to look after 3 children and understand the finances, and actually watching her go through it. And that was hard, when ultimately, because my dad was so good at finances.
She probably didn't have to worry about it.
I didn't need to worry about it. And so there she was, obviously having to learn from scratch, and also kind of put in place things to kind of protect us all and look after us for the future. And that's really stuck by me. So I've always wanted to take on that kind of financial role, throughout my life, and make sure that I've been equipped to understand more about finances. I would say probably my journey in kind of investing probably really took to ground in my 30s, where I am now, because you don't really think about it in your 20s. No. And it's when you start having children and a family, really. That responsibility
to secure their future.
Exactly. And that's kind of where I've kind of come to today. But I would say in my journey through life, I've met so many women who don't, say, oh, my husband does all the finances, I don't need to worry about it. I'm just going to stick to saving and what I know, and that's fine. And I actually want to say, look, listen, there's going to be a time in your life when it may just be you, and you're going to need to learn this and know this and understand it. And particularly when, you've got children involved, there's so much around personal finance that you need to address. So, and one of the reasons, as I said, for implementing both the blog and the Instagram account is to kind of really break down a lot of that financial jargon that you hear about, read about, that kind of, it's just not accessible.
No. And that is also another thing. I don't know what it is, but I think maybe because, I'll just give you an example. If I were to go out, me and my husband were to go out with 2 other couples, usually you would find that men are so comfortable speaking about money and finances and investments and all of that, whereas that doesn't even enter the realm of conversation when there's a group of women. And I think it's just the lack of practice or the lack of talking about finances or money that's where there's a bit of a disconnect.
I totally agree. I think for so long it's kind of often been seen in a way as like a man's world to kind of understand the investments and the finances.
Traditionally it was.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I think but there's no reason why you shouldn't know. And why can't you be part of those conversations? So these days when we go out with like friends, I can't wait to be like, right, yep. So let's talk about the stock market at the moment, you know, like, because why shouldn't you? And, you know, it should be accessible for everybody. And there's no reason why anybody can't start investing, because you don't need to be earning millions of like dollars to be able to do it. You know, you can start from
we're going to get down to the bottom of this, because by the end of this episode, everybody is going to invest in something.
I hope.
That's amazing. In terms of, you know, sort of in your experience or from your experience and in your line of work, what would you think is, or are some of the biggest challenges that women face when it comes to, you know, specifically to do with like financial challenges that women come across?
Yeah. So I think there's several. I mean, one that we've just talked about there is that access to kind of financial literacy. And I think that starts from a very early age as well. Most of us weren't taught about personal finances and finances at school. Certainly I wasn't. And I know a lot of our friends were, you know, it was, you understood maths and economics, but there wasn't the actual, this is what debt means. This is what credit means. This is what investing means. This is what savings is. And this is how to budget your money so you don't get into debt. So I think that, and that's from both sides, from both men and women, really. We weren't taught that at school. And I feel really passionate about ensuring that that is a commonplace in the, you know, in schools at the moment. But I think the workplace is an area where we do see a lot of the kind of that financial gender gap, where historically women in most countries probably are paid less than men. And I think there's that
to close that gap.
Exactly. And I think a lot of that comes down to, you know, that concern about, I suppose it's like that lack of transparency around salaries as well. And I think in the workplace, you often find women perhaps aren't as confident to negotiate salaries as men perhaps are. And so sometimes that kind of gap widens. And when you don't understand kind of, or see visually what salaries are paid, that's where a lot of that comes down to. And then one of the other areas is obviously the fact that women take on a lot of the kind of childbearing years, and obviously a lot of that support for elderly relatives as well. So where you see in particular, like paying into a workplace pension, when you're taking significant time out of work, that then does delay you in terms of where you are, and you lose out on those big chunks of life when you could be putting in savings and things like that. So I think it's in all areas and all aspects, but there are things that we can do to kind of vocalize talking about money in particular.
Yeah. I mean, what are sort of proactive, let's say, for example, you're dealing with somebody or you're talking to somebody, how can you sort of empower them to change that mindset? I mean, aside from, of course, the technical aspect and the knowledge behind how to go about it, but I think it's, how would you go about changing that?
But I think it starts with having that open and honest conversation about money. So not being afraid to address it in like your day-to-day conversations with friends, with, you know, not necessarily with colleagues, but family members as well, you know, where money shouldn't be seen as a taboo of, you know, oh, I think that person owns this and I can't really talk about it because they might judge me about this and my lack of knowledge in it. You know, we're all learning, all of us, and just being sort of passionate and being like, you know, not being afraid to ask, oh, where's a good investment fund to put my money in at the moment? Or where would you say the best interest rates are for savings? You know, and, you know, I just need a bit of help to kind of understand how to budget and things like that. Asking for help and not being afraid to kind of talk about it with that fear of being judged, because often there is that. And I think a lot of it is, as I said, building up that knowledge. So it is making a lot of those financial terms and investment platforms like more accessible for women wherever they are. And I think we are getting there. I think there is a lot out there in particular that I've seen over the last few years online that opens up that space. I know we'll come into kind of some of those kind of resources that we can take away.
That's right.
But I think it is just being willing to learn about it and saying, okay, I've got a savings goal in mind. I want to, and this is where I'm going to look to invest my money or save my money, and having that open conversation.
Do you know, that is actually it, you know, to be able to have the conversation about, let's say, for example, salaries, like we just touched on the gender wealth gap. You know, women are in the workforce, you know, even on, for example, for It Takes a Village, I get hundreds of women with small businesses or they're sort of head of companies and things like that. But the gap is still there. And it's just a matter of how can you potentially close it to build that long-term security? And how can you sort of empower women to try and be more confident to go and negotiate salaries, for example? I mean, is that a matter of, do you think, just the practice of just constantly being fluent in discussing things like that?
And knowing your worth. You know, you've got the same amount of experience as the guy sat next to you, probably even more. So why can't, if they're going in and negotiating their salary, why can't you?
Yeah.
And, you know, I really push on kind of companies like, ideally places like LinkedIn and others, to really empower companies to be transparent about salaries, because then you know what you're going up against. And I think it is about putting it out there and having those conversations, as I keep saying. I think the more of us that talk about it, and particularly on kind of social media, I know there's a big movement at the moment to talk about personal finances, and it's not being a taboo thing and making it accessible. It is just part of that conversation, opening it up.
It's just so funny when it comes to personal finances. Do you know, I grew up in a sort of mindset of, you don't talk about personal finances, you don't talk about religion, and you don't talk about politics. Those kind of grouped into the areas where you shouldn't really be asking people. So it's honestly, it takes a while to unlearn these type of things. And honestly, I feel like I definitely need a bit of work, because, you know, mortgages and interest rates, banks and savings, you know, all of these very, very technical things. I don't know. And to be honest, I feel like I get a little bit intimidated. And I'm a woman that has a master's degree in international business and economics. So, you know, but it was just not taught to me.
No,
I never spoke about it. Me and my husband were buying a property, and a lot of it was, you know, him kind of talking to the banks. And it was just, it's a little bit disappointing. I mean, to know that we are, you know, a couple that are securing, you know, assets and our children's future, yet I'm not really that much in control with the things that we own together. And even with my own, I mean, I've got a full-time job. I'm sure I could be doing better with my finances rather than just taking whatever the percentage out from my income and putting that into savings and just not doing much with it, you know?
But you're right. I think this is a common thing that we see in a lot of relationships as well. But I think comes down to kind of you both being on the same page about, you know, financial goals and what it is that you're both saving for, and being clear on that. And it is hard, because naturally there might always be one of you that will gravitate towards being, I'll sort the finances. I know how this thing works, but you know, if you just give me that and we'll sort it, it'll be fine. But actually you both should be involved in the same page and understand exactly, like, okay, if we're going to put our money in a savings plan that's going to give us 5% interest or whatever, like, you're both in it together, and you can both see clearly what your goal is going to be in 5 years' time, what that's going to bring for both of you, wherever you are. And naturally, there are, in all relationships, there is going to be someone who earns more than the other. And that we see in so many times. But I think if you're both on the same page when it comes to your financial goals and actually what you want to get out of it, and the different methods that you'll use to get there, I think that's kind of where we need to get it to.
Okay, let's get down to it then. So in terms of financial concepts, is there one sort of universal financial concept that we should all be implementing, or that we should know?
I mean, I would say that there are a couple really, but I think one of the biggest things is kind of building a budget. So budgeting.
Okay. Which everybody hates, but
everybody hates.
The word budget is a horrible thing.
It really is. It really is. Do you know, my friends would laugh. I literally have been doing budgets on scraps of paper and little notebooks since I was like 16. I feel like I've still got those in my cupboard.
You recently posted about budgets, and I felt like I was watching it thinking, I was engrossed in what you were saying, and I almost took out a pen and paper and I just thought, let me take this down, because it is something that people don't like it. It's quite worrying. I think also when you have things mapped out in front of you, it could be very good. You could feel a bit better, but it's also been like, oh my gosh, where is this all going and where should I pull back? And
it's terrifying. Yeah. Of course it is. But I think it's one of those things that if you start to say, okay, we'll start with the budget and actually understand, because at that point, and are you marking down how much you need for the bills, for the mortgage, for education, for all those different aspects of your life, then you can say, okay, at the end of each month, I can actually get to, 20% or 30% of this. I can actually save of my salary that's coming in.
Okay. I'm going to take you back a little bit more. So let's say you get a salary.
Yeah.
When you get this, we've all been told a certain percentage that you should be saving. Should you be doing that at the end after? I mean, walk me through once your salary comes into the bank.
So my mantra is pay yourself first. And what we mean by that is automate your savings so that at the start of every month, when your salary comes in, a certain chunk of whatever you feel comfortable with goes straight out of your check-ins, your normal account into a savings account.
Okay.
That is done then. So you do not need to worry about how much you've got left over at the end of the month.
Okay.
So this comes back to kind of why like budgeting in general is so important, because you have an idea, understanding, okay, after all this, I've probably got 20, 30% of my salary that I can put us out in savings. And I think it's that then by doing that, and everybody will tell you there's been so much, I think there's lots of research out there as well that shows that if you pay yourself first by automating your savings, you're so much better because you don't think about it then.
That's right.
It's gone. It's out your salary. And you not need to think at the end of the month, like I haven't got anything left, or I've only got this small amount.
It's you've eaten into whatever you've got in your account.
Exactly. Yeah. But it is hard. And that's why like creating a budget and tracking your spending is important, because only once you do that can you really work out how much you can put aside in savings.
Okay.
Each month. But that's what I would generally.
So pay yourself first.
Yeah.
And then what would you do?
So, and then, as I said, it would then be, that would sit in the kind of savings account. So then whatever you would do with your savings, or you could put it into kind of investments. I've got different buckets.
I'm definitely,
we won't go into
I'm definitely going to get into investments because I'm so interested about it. And I do think that is, keep that one.
Yeah, we'll keep that one.
Yeah.
But I think that's what I said in terms of putting that savings money aside and having access and go and check in on it, as regularly as you can do I think it's really empowering seeing it actually grow. If you're putting it in a good place where it's getting, at the moment, some of those rates are out there about 5% interest. So you're seeing that money grow and it is empowering. I do it and I'm like, yes. I mean, I'm having a down day, or like, there's lots of things that have come out of the account that month. I'm like, but actually.
So you should be putting it on is it a high interest?
In a high interest savings account. What I would also do and recommend is also having an emergency fund. And I talked about that recently on the Instagram. But that is a set of money that's an easy access account. So it is a savings.
Yeah.
But that money goes there. So when
it's a loose savings.
It's a loose savings. Yeah. So it's set aside. Yeah. So that you are not panicking or having to go to your credit card when your car breaks down.
Yeah. Yeah. Those really annoying things.
Oh my goodness. We had that on Friday night.
Yeah,
we had a sofa driver who took the car through the desert and messed up the automatic gearbox. So we definitely had to dip into the emergency pot for that. But having that money there just relieves that stress as well. Like you're not having to think about, I need to dip into the savings, because that high interest savings account is meant to be untouched. Don't even try.
No,
that is not to buy the next outfit or whatever you need it. No.
Nice pair of shoes.
Nice pair of shoes. No. That money is there for whatever financial goal you have in mind that you want to save for. But that emergency fund is that one that you can dip into. There's easy access, but it's not, part of the regular sort of bills that come out each month. It's just there for those unexpected occasions that unfortunately do crop up for all of us.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay. And then you would sort of, on your budget, you'd sort of put in your, is it called fixed costs?
Yeah. So your fixed costs. Exactly. Like, so all of your bills, your food, the education fees, everything else would come out of that. And then you would have that money as well, like, how much you would want to spend, like realistically, that if you're able to track back the last few months about how much you're spending on going out, eating out with friends or clothes, you have an idea then of
how much you want to allocate.
How much you'll allocate for that. Yeah. And, there's no point being restrictive with it, because you will fail in terms, and you probably won't, you'll stop saving or you'll do things. So it's being realistic about, actually, you know what, I do enjoy doing this. And not to be, and one of the things I talk about as well is like that mindful spending. So thinking about, for me, every single day, I buy flat white. And that is regatta.
Oh, I mean, yeah.
That is something small, but that's my non-negotiable.
Yeah.
And I think we all have non-negotiables.
Absolutely.
And it's about saying, like, do you know what? If I'm on I want to save this, that's fine. But having your non-negotiables, don't be like, you know, being tight. If you can, you know, not restricting yourself is what I would say.
That's the thing. That's a bit counterintuitive, because you would think, you know, the idea of savings and budget, it's always like, no, don't do anything. No, just don't even live or breathe, because that's going to cost you some money.
Yeah.
But it's being mindful about what you really enjoy and what brings you joy, because ultimately that's what we're working to
100%, 100%.
So,
and you need that, because I say, the more restrictive you are, it's like with the diet at times, isn't it? I suppose you can liken it to that, because, you know, if you're being so restrictive on yourself, you're ultimately then going to splurge.
Absolutely.
So that, you know, it's been about conscious.
That flat white versus, you know, something very extravagant. Yeah.
It's about being conscious with money. And I think that's kind of where a lot of this kind of stems from.
It's a lot easier said than done.
Yeah. Oh, totally. Yeah. 100%. It is, you know, you do have to get in the right headspace to be able to do it. And it's hard. And do you know what? I mean, I'm not a massive fan of life admin, but it does come into life admin at times.
Do you think it would be a good idea to, let's say, personal finance? So me as as Raya, do you think I should have the conversation with my husband about budgeting myself and my savings? Or is that a separate conversation of our savings and our budget? I mean, should we have full transparency across the board in terms of finances?
I mean, for as much as you can have, I mean, that would be my advice, to kind of be as transparent. It is always going to be tricky when you have got, I mean, it's hard. My husband and I at one point did have a joint account, and, you know, it will come up on the credit on the app, ping, 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 all these, like, whatever drinks he's having you know, down Kickers or wherever it is that he's having. And you're suddenly like, oh my goodness. And you get frustrated. So that can be quite hard. I think you have to have, what is healthy is having that joint account, obviously, where if you can have your regular bills and everything, you feel comfortable, but allowing yourselves both to have that me money, let's say. But I think where it comes down to that complete transparency as well, is like what you're both saving for. You really need to be clear and have that conversation about those financial goals. Say to yourself, what are we saving for now, for a year, for 3 years, for 5 years? Obviously, with children in mind, you've got to think about their education and the university fees as well. And actually having that conversation by saying, okay, I'm going to proportion off this amount of my salary, and if you can do that, and we'll put it into this savings account each month. So I think it is, have your time, because I think if you are constantly grilling the other about what they're spending, that's not going to be healthy for any relationship.
I was going to say, I'm like, that just adds another layer of conflict at home that nobody really wants.
It totally does. But I think having those open, honest conversations about those financial goals and where you're putting your savings, definitely.
Yeah. You talked a little bit about goals, specifically, I think, on your Instagram. Do you think that goals, I mean, you said you've got sort of short-term ones, so 1 to 3 years, and then 5, and then beyond that. Mm-hmm. Do you think that's really crucial in terms of a saving strategy?
I definitely think it is. And because what you find in a lot of the research that I've done out there is so much around investing, and we'll come on to that, which is great, but you've got to see investing as a like a long-term plan, right? So we'll go into investing but you will find with the stock market, there'll be fluctuations, right? Yeah. So that's where you're thinking long-term, because you need to ride out the storm to get the high at the end of it. Mm-hmm. Savings wise, and if you're thinking about those, so let's say, like, we talk about 1 year plan. So is it paying off debt? Is it an extension on a house? Is it a wedding? Then 3 to 5 years might be that you're buying a house, or you're in that process of your life. So that 1 year plan, you want to put it somewhere in an easy access, or we call them notice period accounts, where you can put your money, and you give them, say, 6 months notice for when you want it back.
Got you. Okay.
So let's say, so if you continue to pay into that and say, actually, I realize I want to buy a car in 6 months time. So then you can give the bank that notice period, and then you can withdraw it at the end of that 6 months. And you find quite high interest rates on those type of accounts. And then the kind of 5-year accounts that, as I say, if you're saving for a wedding or a house or anything else, there are certain bonds that you can invest in, or fixed interest accounts that will be like, say, 2 to 3 years, or sometimes up to 5 years, where and you can guarantee that you'll get 5 to 6%. That's on average, which is a lot of money. And at the moment, what we're seeing, because of inflation all around the world, really, is savings accounts are offering now the highest interest they have done in such a long time.
I really need to go back and revisit. I need to see what's my bank and what's the interest. Because I've opened a savings account and there is an interest rate on it, but I need to double check.
Yeah. It's definitely worth doing that.
Yeah.
100% to go back and see, because if it's not paying you enough, there will be other ones out there that you can move to. So look around and kind of, see and as I said, that's where you kind of think, and it is hard locking your money away for that period of time, but it is so helpful at the end, because you will get the higher interest.
Absolutely. And that's the thing, that it's just to be able to kind of, again, I've opened a bank account a long time ago, and I've opened a savings account, but I think that it's definitely time to revisit. I think that's sort of leads to my other question. So should you be revisiting your goals?
Yeah.
Every year, every 2 years? I mean, how?
Things change in life, right? We are constantly changing. Yeah, I think every 6 months to a year, have a realization of kind of where you are in your life, and
how do you need to pivot, or do you need to do something else?
Exactly. I think that's completely it. And that's what they say about rebalancing your kind of investment portfolio as well, the kind of where you get out. The older you are in life, then you need to kind of think about where you've kind of got investments. But yeah, I think certainly go in every 6 months to a year. Sometimes you might not necessarily need to if years pass by, but
it seems to be on track. Yeah.
But for many, when we get to certain points in our life, we might want to start a business. That's something that we might not have thought about 6 months before, but actually we now need to start a business, and we need to access some of that savings, or we need to put away more savings. So definitely revisiting when you can.
To always have it kind of in the back of your mind, and be mindful that make it work for you.
Yeah.
You ready to talk about an investment?
I won't go into loads of detail on it, because I realize it's.
I mean, honestly, I feel, I feel like the word investment, I always think, oh my God, stock market, stocks, trading. It just seems like a big blur.
Yeah.
And you see all these things that go up and down, and sometimes they're green and sometimes it's red. And you think, why am I going to put my money in that?
Yeah. No, I totally get it.
For somebody who doesn't invest, and I really want to, it seems a bit of a gamble.
And that is totally the impression that a lot of people have when it comes to kind of investing. And that's certainly what I kind of came at it. And for many years, obviously, I've tried to learn the things that my dad, I remember my dad sat in front of the IBM sort of massive computer that we had in our hallway, looking at the stocks every single night, to check which ones have gone up and which ones have gone down. And that's my first memory of kind of the stock market. But actually, I think these days it's so much more accessible to people if you kind of have that kind of brief understanding about it. What I would say is you don't need to, it doesn't need to feel as risky as it seems, right? And one of the things where I would advise, and so many of the biggest investors in the world, you take Warren Buffett, who's the kind of, I would say, the number one investor probably in the States. His thing is, don't invest in things you don't understand.
Okay.
And what I mean by that, and his advice as well, as many investors, is to look at what we call an index fund. So any of us could do this, right? So you essentially would open up a brokerage. So there's places, I think, in the UAE, like eToro, Vanguard. There's these ones that you would kind of buy account for.
Just to take you back. So these are trading platforms?
So they're not necessarily trading platforms per se. It would be what we call an investment platform. So it's where they host all of the kind of stocks and shares from all of the different companies, and there's different funds that you can buy into.
Okay.
So as a new beginner, I think the best thing to think about is buying an index fund, which would be where you own a slice of all of the hundreds of businesses.
So in that fund?
In that fund.
Okay.
Exactly. And then one of the common ones is the S&P 500, which is the top 500 US companies. So historically, what they have said over the past 100 years, they've been monitoring the S&P 500, and it's gone up on average 10% every single year.
That's amazing.
Isn't it? Now there has
That's
been
better than any savings.
100%. Yeah.
So why would you put your money to get a 5% interest?
Because what you've got to think about is that, yes, it was, I say it on average every year. So not every single year. There have been times when the market has massively dipped. So you look back to 2008 kind of financial crisis, and then you have, I think it was like the 2020 as well, obviously with COVID, and then we didn't do so well last year. So there has been dips in the market. No, it's not been that many, but it has dipped quite a bit. And what you don't want to do is think, right, let's say in 3 years' time, you start investing in 3 years' time, and you're like thinking, I'm doing really well. The market suddenly drops. And then
you're like, oh my goodness.
Yeah, exactly.
All my money's gone.
Well, yeah. I mean, it won't all go, but you know, like
a portion of it,
a big portion. So that's where you've got to think about investing in the long term. And that's what we say. So thinking about ideally what they say is 10 to 15 years or more. So
to just keep
plugging away every single month, put it in and watch it grow. And that's what you do. And don't go back they say not to go back regularly, because you're going to be freaked out. Some days it's going to drop, some days it's going to rise.
Just sort of put it away, whatever amount that you feel comfortable with.
Exactly.
Put it away and keep doing that every month.
Exactly. Yeah.
And pretend it's not there for the next 10 years.
Exactly. And that's 100% the way to think about it with investing. So
that could be part of your long-term savings.
Exactly. And that's what we generally tend to find. I mean, you might be all right, possibly okay to review it at 5 years and say, actually, it's done quite well and I can take it out. But what you don't want to do is to think about that investment pot as something that you need to get into if you need it urgently. And that's why I talk about, where we talked about there, about those savings that do at the moment have those 5% interest rates, because you are going to need stuff that comes up in the next 5 years. Of course you are. Oh, we all do.
Of course.
So that's where I kind of would say as a beginner to kind of think about opening up an account, investing in an index fund, so that I know the few that are in the kind of that one. Obviously, there's Apple, Amazon, the big names as part of that big camp. But do I know the littlest ones out there? No. Do I need to? Not really, because it's like what you'll find, and the reason why it does so well is because when the big ones the giants are bringing up the little ones, and then it kind of will fluctuate. Yeah. So that's why they say, because you are diversifying, and that's a key to investing.
Diversify your investments.
Exactly. Yeah. Is diversification. And that's the biggest way that you can, anybody can really invest, and you don't need lots. You really don't need to have that much. If you're putting in like a few hundred dirhams a month, if you can, then that's fine, because all you're doing is and then that pot of money will increase over time, and you'll be able to kind of really see it in the next, let's say 10, 15, 20 years. Can you tell I'm passionate about
this? But it's
actually breaking it down.
Honestly, I'm doing something wrong. I haven't started investing. I find it very intimidating. I am going to. I think that's why, in that, the stars aligned, and that's when, so we connected. So it's just so interesting, because that's, I feel like it almost needs to be done. Yeah. It should be a part of the way that you handle money. Yeah. Investment.
100%. And I think there's other things as well that I think I talked about recently, which is, real estate as well. So.
Oh, that was my other question. I mean, usually, when people say, your investments, you would naturally think it's property.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I mean, usually property is also massive amounts of.
It is. And that's amazing for a lot of people to be able to invest in property. And certainly, if you can, a lot of people do it as kind of a second home. And that's where you do see, obviously, if you're able to rent it out, and that is a fantastic investment, but that's not always accessible to people. And so, but there are ways, and I as I mentioned the other day, around investing in small platforms. So at the moment, there's quite a few that have opened up where you can, what they call fractional investing. So essentially you can invest, and it's so exciting because I actually have a tiny little share of a property in the marina.
Wow.
And I put in about maybe 2,000 dirhams into it. That's how much.
Well, I don't understand. You have to bring it back down.
Yeah. So this is
pretend I'm
so there's a platform out there, that it's on a map. On an app, where you invest, whatever you're comfortable in. And roughly it's anywhere from 500 dirhams upwards, but there'll be hundreds of you who will do the same thing. And you essentially are buying a property, but it's split in, let's say 200 ways. or 300 ways.
Okay.
And you essentially put that money in and you all get a certificate to say that you have purchased this property. And then you receive a little income each month. And it's a tiny amount, but I get a little rental income each month from this little share that I have and a property in the marina. And basically my plan is just to put it out there, keep it in there for the next 5 years. And they predict it's probably going to increase by like 30%. Obviously the value.
It's just a one-time payment.
Yeah, one-time payment.
So it's not like it's not as opposed to the investments that you're putting in every
exactly.
month. Okay.
So it's a one-time investment, but ideally what they advise, and which is what I'll be doing, is that little amount that you get income-wise each month, you reinvest it back into other properties that kind of come up on the platform.
Got you. Okay.
But
what is the platform called?
It's called Stake. So that's one that I've been using. And no, it's brilliant. And I've talked about it, I think, a couple of times, just because I found it so accessible. It's really easy to kind of get into. You don't need lots of money. And it's just quite nice, like, way to think, actually, I own a little bit of whatever property it is on the Palm or the Marina or somewhere like that. And I have not had to pay loads out for it. But it's just quite fun because, like, the people living in that's rented out and you're getting that tiny bit of income, your proportion of what you put in. So
brilliant. I had no idea that even existed.
I know. And most people haven't, right? Yeah. I talked to lots of people and they're like, oh, that's
what was it called? Fractional investing.
So in fractional real estate investing.
Fractional real estate investing.
Yeah.
That is so interesting.
Yeah.
I'm going to swing you back to actual investing.
Yeah.
So a lot of the times, I think maybe because people don't really know much about it, naturally assume that you would need an advisor, a financial advisor to kind of guide you in this way. Is that necessary, or can you just cross it out completely?
So I think that it depends how comfortable you feel, right? I think you can do it yourself, but there is knowledge and research that comes into that.
Or contact Mom That Invests, right?
100%. That's it. But I don't think you necessarily, as I said, I've talked about the few of those platforms there that you can go on and do it yourself. And you just buy the fund and it's in there. And a lot of them break down what the fund is. But I think
would they not take a percentage?
There is very very small percentage fees. So some can be as low as like 0.03%.
So it's literally just sort of a website. You log in, put in all your details, and then do they give you any sort of tips?
Yeah. So there are tips that come along with a lot of these platforms and they kind of break down the performance of it, the past performance. So you can kind of get a judge how far it's come and kind of where it's predicted to go to and what companies kind of sit into that. So yes, I think you can do it yourself, but I think a lot of the times, it depends how confident you feel because people sometimes would prefer to put it with a financial advisor, which is totally understandable. But what I would say is just to be really careful about which financial advisor you would go with, right? So you need to make sure you're getting those recommendations from friends and family, colleagues as well. But also be aware of their fees because actually I had this conversation with my friend recently and they were like, oh yeah, the fees it's only said about 1 to 2%. I thought, well, yeah, but what you're finding is that's not just 1 to 2% of what you're putting in there now. They're asking for 1 to 2% of the lifeline of your investing.
Oh, wow.
So that 1% then compounds. And that's with
a financial advisor.
Yeah, that's with a financial advisor you can see, which is fine. And but if you're comfortable with that, but just to be aware that
is the case. It's not just off whatever you've put in there and then.
Yeah, exactly. So that is that 1% of all your investments kind of whilst you're with them, essentially. So it's just to be mindful of things like that. And also making sure that they come to you with like a really clear financial plan that you get to sign off on and that it's not something that's just kind of give you your money and stick it out there and, maybe
we'll do the best for you. Yeah.
So I think as I said, it does come down to what you're comfortable with. I think there is so many ways that you can do it yourself, but yeah, I think it's just about having that knowledge and research and talking it through and knowing that the platforms are out there for you to do it yourself. But equally, if you feel like I'm just a bit nervous I feel it's quite risky, I'd rather put it in a financial advisor who understands that my risk tolerance is quite low, then fine, go with that option. So yeah, I'm not here to advise either way. And I think it's just those different options.
Yeah, I think it's whatever kind of suits you.
Yeah.
But to be careful either way.
100%.
It's scary. I mean, not that it's just so intimidating. I don't know. You naturally assume investments, and it's all, you see things like the Bitcoin going up and down, and
Yes.
people making loads of money at the, overnight, and then losing it all. And you think,
so crypto is another game.
Is it?
That's something that I'm not going to come and talk about it here really, because I think there's very different fields of thought around kind of crypto. I think it's an area that I might have explored a little bit about, but I wouldn't put
money in
a lot of my investments in there at all. I think, like you've talked about, crypto is the kind of the buzzword that everyone thinks about when it comes to investing, and that can be very volatile, 100%, and a very unknown market at the moment. But it's got a huge potential in terms of where it's going to come to. But
I'm going to get you to come back again and talk specifically about crypto, because I have no clue about anything.
I don't want to confuse people and talk about it now.
No,
but I think
but
crypto can be, I think it is that taboo subject that a lot of people and people have done really well out of it. But as you've said, people have lost a lot of money on crypto, and it can, some people could view it sometimes of the gambling side of investing, which, if you're starting out investing, probably isn't the right route to kind of take. I would say I think there's a lot out there to understand about crypto, but it'll take time. But I think, I think it will form a big part of the future in terms of, like you say, Bitcoin and digital currency. But yeah, for now, I think if you're starting out,
just stick to the fundamentals.
Yes.
So let's say you've got a mom or a woman, or even dads, whoever, parents, and they're looking to sort of sharpen up their personal finances. What would be the ideal split of whatever income that they've got? In the sense that savings would be, you've got your emergency savings, a portion would be in investment, the rest is blah, blah, blah.
Yeah. So I think a rule of thumb, as I said, if you can try to have that 20 to 30%, now that's quite high of your salary.
Okay.
So if you're splitting it between emergency funds, so probably, I think if you've got, let's say 30% of your savings, if you can put in about 10%, I would say, to your emergency fund.
Okay.
And then that 20%, if not more, then go to kind of the split between your savings and investing as well. I think it's just, as I said, the best way to think about is those financial goals of what you want to achieve. Because once you sit down and think about what it is you want to achieve in 5 years' time, you can say, okay, I want to portion off a bigger amount for this goal, and then I'll have 10% that will be for long-term investing. But I do think it's worth having that 10% each month, if you can, to put into an emergency fund. That is quite a lot of money, but I think it's so important, as all of us, as we talked about,
things just come up last minute.
Yeah, exactly.
Whether it's sort of repairing for a car, or it's just every 5 minutes something comes up. So it's good to know that it's not, you're not dipping into the savings that you're not supposed to be touching, kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Adapting to life changes. So obviously your personal finance will look very different, as like you said, like a 20-year-old to somebody who's in a relationship, somebody who's been married, and somebody who, of course, has children. Yeah. And then later down the line.
Yeah, 100%.
When it does, obviously in terms of savings and investments, to what extent would that change? So let's say, even for example, as a woman who is married with children, the amount that I would probably save might be greater than somebody who obviously, is in their 20s and at university.
This is really true, because I think what you do find as well, when you have children, it just completely change your mindset. And I've had this conversation so many times, because it's not just you that you're thinking about. You've got to think about their future. Absolutely. And how you're investing for, and when you hit that, and those are realities, I think, around retirement, I find often come when you've had the children and they
haven't even thought about retirement.
Oh goodness. Yeah, no, that is something but in your 20s, you don't and
I'm not in my 20s.
No, I'm just, neither am I. It's fine.
But I definitely need to.
But what I mean is, in your 20s, you don't think about these big things to plan for retirement and beyond, because you're focused on the next 5 years and how I'm going to get my career started and But actually, if you could, and There's so many, I call them friends on the Instagram community, but there's so many and they're in their 20s and they kind of talk about, I'm putting aside this amount of money and by the time I'm 65, it's going to be this amount of money. I'm thinking, oh my goodness, you're doing so well.
Yeah.
Because saving that and investing in it in that early age will just do so well, because it's all about the compounding on that interest that you're getting over the next 40 years. It's just incredible of what it's actually going to be. So that's one of the key things is what you find is someone in their 20s, let's say, is probably, let's say we'll call it like $200, putting aside $200 if they can a month. But by the time you get to in your 30s, that increases then to $400 a month. To then in your 40s, that's like 5 or 6 or like even more if you want to have that healthy retirement when you retire, right? So it is, if we could go back and tell our children, and which we will do, is start in investing earlier on in your 20s. So that you are setting yourself up for retirement. And that might seem like such a long way away, but it does come round, it will come round to us, right? And also your 65-year-old self is going to thank your 20-year-old self
Absolutely.
For putting that aside, that money.
What is the age requirement to have an investment fund?
Oh, it's a
18 or something?
I think it's about 18. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, then potentially they should be talking about this at the end of school.
In school. They should be talking about it in school. There's no reason why it shouldn't be part of the curriculum.
Because being, sort of as a human, let's say somebody who's been working, if you have debt, I mean, that carries with, that you carry that for your whole life, basically, unless you have a strategy to get out of debt.
Yeah.
And a lot of people go into debt because of poor savings.
Yeah.
Or not really being educated enough to actually put
100%. And they've not been educated about the interest rates that come on that debt and the way that you're caught out so many times. I totally agree. I think there's so much that we can do, both as parents, but also within the school system to really teach children at a young age and really break down all those different terms so that they're not falling, if they're taking out a credit card, that's fine. As long as they know how to pay it off so they don't accrue the interest. It's all those different terms. If we were all only taught at school, there'd be so many people out there today who would not be in debt, like you said, and have big savings account.
Probably the most stressful. Yeah. I mean, financial worry on the scale of stress levels, that's always going to be the first thing that sort of really, brings on anxiety.
Yeah.
But if you are taught how to be, almost smart or how to be comfortable handling your own personal finances at an early age, you probably wouldn't have gotten there in the first place.
No, exactly. This is 100% what I would say. And it's so much more that we can do. And I think I'm starting to see schemes of work out there that are going into schools kind of talking about it. But I think I just feel
everyday life practice.
Exactly. It's so important. It should be ingrained as like those modules that we are taught at school. But yeah, I think you're right. I think as you go on in life, though, when you have children, then those savings pot, because it's not just, as I said, you've got to think about your retirement, but you've got to think about their education as well. So the amount that you're putting into savings then increases more. And hopefully by then, obviously your salaries are higher, so it kind of matches that as well. Yeah. But I think, like you say, different things, but it's definitely worth thinking about retirement planning as early as you can, really, to make sure you've got that retirement pot for when you do retire.
A technical question. So let's say let's give me a platform that you would use to invest.
So I use the Vanguard.
Vanguard. Yeah. So let's say you've got that and you've got your own profile. Are you able to invest in multiple funds?
Yeah.
Okay.
So you can, there's there's several different funds. So you could have, say there's the one that's the S&P 500, which is those American companies. But then there's like what they call like life strategy funds, which, you can invest in across companies like the highest performing companies in the world, or like developing, companies and the developing parts of the world as well. So there's so many different funds that you can choose. And there's certain funds as well that I guess it's probably more something for when later on in life, and let's say you built up your savings, but there's ones that pay a dividend each month as well. So you can then take out that dividends as like, if you've done well and you've been able to invest.
It's like that little treat.
It's that treat. And then a lot of people use that dividend as an income each month.
Do you know, it's actually funny because we have conversations with me and then some friends, and they were saying that, yes, these dividends, you could potentially maybe use that for plane tickets for your holidays.
Yeah, 100%.
Or, whatever it might be, renewing car insurance or something like that. So that could be part of your emergency.
Yeah, it could.
Savings almost, it goes in through here and into that account. Yeah.
And you not need to lift a penny for it. Yeah.
Oh, brilliant. In terms of resources and tools, I think, again, after this conversation, everybody's probably going to quickly Google Vanguard or quickly Google whatever it is here. Yeah. What are, let's say, again, for me, complete beginner, have no clue. What would be a good resource to read up on, aside from Moms That Invest and, what you're doing for the community? Honestly, it's breaking it down to not be so intimidating.
Yeah.
Is there anything else that people can?
As I said, I mean, I guess it depends kind of like how you're able to kind of consume like resources. So let's say like reading wise, there are a few books out there that you can kind of read up on. A couple of the ones that I found really useful is A Millionaire Teacher by Andrew Hallam. That's a really good one to he talks a lot about these index funds that I've talked about. But that's all about the 7 lessons that you should have been taught about money in school. And it's really like a really good book. And it really opened my eyes to the world of investing. There's The Intelligent Investor as well. There's a couple of ones that really break down a lot of those sort of terms. I think there's certain websites out there that can help. I haven't found one in particular kind of in the UAE at the moment, but there are a couple like UK ones that Money Saving Expert. That's a really good website. And whilst it is for a UK audience, it is helpful because it does break down a lot of the kind of financial jargon.
The jargon, I think it's the jargon.
But one of the things that I would say is like podcasts. I love listening to podcasts, obviously. We like the way we talk. We love a good podcast. But I think if you're able to, on your commute, on the way to work, put on a podcast, and there's a few that out there, like I like listening to, there's actually one called Girls That Invest, a New Zealand, couple of girls, and they really are really useful. They really break down a lot of those terms that are kind of banded around, like the Dow Jones and the S&P 500, all those ones that you hear about but you don't know. They literally like break it down. The Nasdaq, all of that. So they're great. And there's a couple of UK ones that I like Making Money, and the Money Clinic with Claire Barrett, and they just talk about money in a kind of really kind of normal conversation about it. And it's not like, here's how to make a load of money, or this is, it's like, actually what are investments and how should we save and those things. And it's just normal day conversation. So I think having a look at podcasts in particular, because they do talk about it in a way that's digestible and relatable. So that's the kind of key areas that I would say. And there's a lot of people talking about it on social media. And whilst like, obviously you can't take everything for granted on social, but I think it is helpful and it's out there and people are vocalizing and talking about it. So those are the different resources that I would probably.
I just think that, to be able to be, very comfortable with finances, honestly, it sets you free. It does it as a woman, as a mother, even if I wasn't working, to be able to understand what's going on as a collective household. Really puts you in almost the driver's seat. And to be prepared for any life changes, you don't know if marriages don't last, people get sick, things like that, to be able to, just like what you're saying with your mom. All of a sudden she had to get everything all together. After somebody else was looking after finances. So I think to be able to kind of draw on these resources and really kind of read up on it is helpful.
So helpful.
And it's a preparation so that you feel quite confident. Not all of a sudden you're thrown in a situation and you think, oh my God, I don't even know where to start right now. So it's very important.
100%. And one of the things that I probably didn't touch on before that is really key. And I think that's why, obviously, talking about my mum being able to kind of adapt her life, is that life insurance, and not underestimating the importance of life insurance when you have a family.
Really?
Yeah, it is so important to have that life insurance, because if something was to happen to either of you, that will then cover you financially for the other person to then look at their children. And it's such an important thing to make sure that you have. And I think, as I said, in our situation, that was able to kind of tide my mum over. So I think having that, if you can put aside a small amount of money into life insurance each month, and it's not much, that will then help you as a family if anything was to go wrong.
That's
And
a
you've
good
got that
tip.
reassurance then,
Yeah.
knowing that your children will be protected. Yeah.
Do you know, it's so funny. Again, things like life insurance. I mean, people should be advising that
Yeah.
right from the start, because I mean, we get insurance for our cars. We have
Yes.
health
It's so
insurance,
true.
you know, but you know, health insurance for our day to day. But what happens if something was to happen to us and we've got the kids?
Yeah.
And I get it. Maybe life insurance maybe is not such a sexy topic to talk about it in your 20s, but I mean, now,
yeah,
it is absolutely necessary.
it's so true. So true. Yeah.
Yes. Oh, brilliant. Okay, now I think this is sort of the mic drop moment. Do you have actionable steps that people, you know, let's say you've got like 3 big steps for anyone who's listening to start today?
Yeah.
What would be those sort of pieces of advice?
I think, first of all, set yourself a budget.
Okay.
So
budget.
Sit
down, grab yourself a coffee.
Yeah. Track your expenses. Have a look, go back through your credit card bills or whatever bills that you've got. Find out how much you're realistically spending each month. So that then you can say, okay, and have a look realistically over the past like 6 months to a year and say, oh, there's been quite a few occasions of big emergency things that have come up. So I do need to start thinking about this amount of money, and realistically, what is my emergency fund going to be? I would then have that amount once you've decided how much you've got and set aside, hopefully, if it can get to 20-30% of what you're bringing in, automate savings.
Okay.
So that's number 2.
So you can just do that on your bank, saying every month I want to, you know, put
direct
X
debit
amount
going into that separate savings account, whatever you want to use it for. If that's then, you know, or you would have, for instance, for me, I get a certain amount direct debit that goes straight into my Vanguard account each month. And then I also have it into my savings account as well. So yeah, I think have those different savings accounts that you've got, and then financial goals. So what are the financial goals? Realistically, think about where you are in your life. What do you want to achieve in the next 3 years, 5 years, 10 years and beyond? And once you know that, then you can start thinking about how much you need to save and where you can save to then make sure that you're kind of doing the right thing. So yeah, I think those are the kind of key things that I would kind of, you know, start out if you're kind of going from basics to kind of think about where you want to start in your life.
Should we all get onto Vanguard then as well?
Well, yeah. I know that the Vanguard is, I know like a US and UK, like there's,
I think there's another one. Is it?
There's, I want to say
Schwab? Is that it?
Yeah, it's Sawa, I think it's called. And then eToro, I know that it's available for UAE audience. Yeah.
Is there a difference between the two, or can you still use that platform?
You can still use that platform, to access the S&P 500.
Okay.
And those are the ones. Yeah.
So set a budget, set your goals, create a trading account.
Investing
Investing
account. Yeah. Understand what takes your fancy. As say, it might be investing in small amounts of real estate.
Yeah.
Or
remind me again of that. What was that?
So that's Stake. I think it's called Get Stake, but the Stake app. But yeah, so
lots of options.
Lots of different options. And yeah, I think like read about it,
talk about it, ask questions.
Yeah.
You know, don't feel any particular way.
Yeah. And reach out to a financial mentor if you're
absolutely. That would be the number one tip. Reach out to moms that invest.
Yeah.
Honestly, not for anything. I literally sat there, looked at all of your posts and think, okay, yeah, so we need this and we need that. And it wasn't intimidating, and it wasn't, again, money is so sensitive. There was at no point did I feel like, oh, this is just not for me. No, everything applied to me.
Yeah.
So I love how you're doing it. So keep going, please.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, it's really wonderful.
The more that we can inspire women from wherever they are in the world, that's my goal. And I feel like so passionate about it.
I know, I can tell. I love it. I'm definitely going to be calling you up next week.
I feel like my dad would thank me.
No, look, I mean, at the end of the day, what you're doing and what you're sort of putting out into the community, as well as for yourself and for your family, is ultimately, the most helpful thing.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure also your husband is probably thinking it's really great to have somebody as a partner in this, that it's not the entire financial sort of burden is on one person.
No, that's so true. I think he does get bored of the investing chat at times, but for sure. But I think he does. Appreciate it.
It's wonderful. Usually at the end of the episode, at the start, I start with a quote, and at the end, I end it, but not from me, from you. Have you got a quote for us today?
I love the world-renowned quote that the best is yet to come.
Yeah.
And I think it just gives you that inspiration every day that you can feel like really positive and know that you're making a difference. And, you know, in the next 5 years are going to look different to now in 10 years. And
absolutely,
wherever you are,
it's perfectly
the best is
fitting.
yet to come.
Yeah. Thank you.
No, thank you. It's been a pleasure to be on.
Thank you so much for coming. This was so helpful. I feel quite inspired. I'm actually I'm going to go back home.
I've achieved my mission.
No, but really, I'm going to go back home. Number one, I'm going to check what's going on with my savings account. Just what is the interest rate on that? And then just really put it down and be a little bit, I guess, smarter or get my money to work for me a little bit more.
Yeah. Well, I'm here if you ever want to talk through anything.
Trust me, I will take you up on that.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
No, thank you.
Thank you for being here.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to They Say It Takes a Village. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. I look forward to bringing you another one next week. Don't forget, please subscribe, rate, and review so I can reach and help even more parents. And if you've got a topic that you'd like me to cover, please head over to my Instagram page, ittakesavillage.me, and drop me a line.